Hello humans, it's just Martine, and welcome to the start of a new week of Squash That Series. Squash That Series is a readathon focused on reading sequels and finishing series. We're currently in the middle of a tournament bracket. It was originally created by Bailey from Is Bailey Reading and Kayla from Kayla Ray Reads. And actually, speaking of them, this week is going to go crazy because of them. Last week, you should check it out here, I was up against Bailey. I took the L on that one. Now I am Bailey's cheerleader, but the active player that our team is against for this week is Kayla.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
The game that we are playing is the teams round, so I'm glad that I have books stacked up and ready to go. I'm ready to support my team. We're trying to think of a team name right now, but I'm excited to get reading for the week, and exciting, my last couple of reading vlogs haven't really had any book reviews in them because I've just been getting to like the end of the books and then stopping. But this week we're gonna finish tons of books, so it's gonna be crazy over here. I'm ready for some fun. Let's get to it. Good evening. It is 5:17 p.m. and I'm here to give you an update and finally review a book for you. So the first book that I actually finished for Squash That Series, like the first sequel I finished for this, was Hidden Bodies by Caroline Kepnes, and I honestly had no particular intention of completing this series until I was scrolling through my Libby looking for every possible option of books that I could add to my series tag just in case I needed something available during Squash That Series, and I landed on Hidden Bodies by Caroline Kepnes because I read You by Caroline Kepnes in 2019 and I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was fine. You know, the whole shtick with that one is it's a thriller, but it's written in second person POV where the main character, Joe Goldberg, is saying like, you do this, you do that. And I think one of my main issues with that book at the time was that the second person perspective is a creative way to tell a story, but it was drawing me out of it because I'm very different from the character that Joe was describing in that way. So when he said, you do this, I was like, well, I'd never do that. So it just drew me out of the story. But the second book, Hidden Bodies, is not told like that. It's told after the events of the first book, and Joe has kind of moved on to other people and to other things, and it is no longer told in second person POV. The second thing that I think helped in my experience with Hidden Bodies compared to You is knowing myself, I probably listened to the audiobook of You very quickly, like on 3 times the speed or something. And because I didn't have to rush last week to get my hours in, like rushing through pages doesn't do you any good when you're counting the time for something, I was just leisurely listening to Hidden Bodies as I was going through the week. I realized the narrator has done this incredible job of capturing the voice of this really sick individual, and the narration made me enjoy it so much more. And so at first I was like, well, then I probably didn't listen to the audiobook of the first book, but I looked on my library app and that's what I had checked out, was the audiobook. So clearly I wasn't listening that closely because it's the same narrator I checked. Anyway, so for this one, I gave it 4 stars. It's a thriller mystery. We're following Joe Goldberg. He's got some issues. He's in between some relationships and he kind of has a messed up way of getting the things that he wants in this life. He's a bookseller and a writer and just, you know, makes some really bad decisions. And we follow him in this book as he continues to make those terrible decisions, and we see what's going to happen next and what bodies he's going to be hiding next. So I'm actually excited. I just checked out the 3rd book in this series so that I can continue this series during this round of Squash That Series and have another good audiobook to listen to. It is over 400 pages, so I got plus 100 points for Bailey's team, and we're calling ourselves the Bookly Besties. And then to subtract points from Kayla and Gabby's team, it has been on my TBR for over a year because I read the first one in 2019, which takes away 50 points from them. So not huge, but Bailey and I have also talked through our strategy, and because we're the first ones getting a points update tomorrow at 6 a.m., we're trying to keep kind of a low profile. We either want to look like we're close to them or losing so that they feel comfortable and we can make up ground. I still have so many books I can finish super fast and then submit them when we need a push in points, but for now we're just kind of going slow and steady. So I might be finishing 1 more book tonight, but I'll definitely be making progress on some or starting another. It all depends. Yay for finally having something to say to you. I'm here to talk to you about some books. Last night I finished listening to the audiobook for Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card, which I'm giving 4 stars, and I have a really complicated feeling about this book. It is the second book in the Ender's Game series, and Ender's Game is one of my favorite books of all time, but Orson Scott Card is not one of my favorite people of all times. So it was really weird reading this book because the main theme of this particular book is basically if you understand somebody enough, then you cannot help but love them. Nobody is all good and all bad, and there's something redeemable in everybody. Generally is a theme that I very strongly agree with, but what makes it complicated in this case for me is that Orson Scott Card wrote this, and he said in his author's note afterwards that this was the book he set out to write. He just wrote Ender's Game basically to set up the characters for this one, which I thought was interesting, but this was the story that mattered to him. And so it's weird to me that he has spent so much effort in his life not showing love to people instead of trying to understand them and showing them love through that in the way that maybe his characters would make you think he believes is right. And that's what I struggle with, is not my own feelings about this author who has said and done some terrible things, but the dissonance of him writing this and this project mattering to him and then him not acting that way. Which is maybe a little deeper than you wanted me to go in this silly little readathon, but that's where I am right now. I do think I might have liked this book more if I had been able to read it with my eyeballs. I have been trying to collect this series in used bookstores for years now, and I still haven't managed to find this second book. So for this, I just had to use what my library had, and they only had the audiobook, they didn't have the ebook. Luckily, me spending forever trying to find this second book means that I fulfilled the prompt to take points away from the other team of on your TBR for over a year. It's been years that I've been trying to read this book. I don't know, it's a little hard. That's the theme, but I guess I didn't tell you what it's about. The Ender's Game series in general follows this. He starts as a child in the series named Ender Wiggin, and he goes to battle school because he's this super genius, especially at understanding other people and other beings. And so he's brought in to kind of fight against this alien race in this war. And in this one, it's 3,000 years after the events of Ender's Game, but because of the way that travel at light speed works, Ender is in his 30s now, and he is a speaker for the dead. And the job of a speaker for the dead is to go to a place when people request one where a person has passed away and speak about them, usually at their funeral, and to say the good and the bad and really to understand them deep, deep down. And in that way find beauty in their life and a great deal of empathy. And so he gets called to this one place where there is now a new alien species, and because of his mistakes in the first book, he feels very called to go there and not only speak for a couple people who've passed away, but also try and meet that alien species and form a relationship between the humans and that species. And so it was just fascinating to think about things that are actions of honor in some cultures or actions of violence in others. And so we misunderstand each other all the time, and I think this is true with humans too. I don't think we need to be aliens for this to be the case. I mean, there are some cultures in which a gesture that we would do all the time in the United States is considered offensive, and vice versa. It really tried to capture the idea that there is so much nuance in all of our behavior, and when you go in and you assume bad, you are often viewing the story incorrectly or at least incompletely. And so I really liked that thought experiment, but I just found the message of the book ironic in that way because of who wrote it. So I'm going to have to sit with that for a bit longer, but I'm glad I finally got around to reading that. Hear me out, hear me out. Good morning. It's Friday morning and I'm here to deliver 2 3.5-star reviews to you. The first is for A World Without Princes, which is the second book in the School for Good and Evil series, and like I said, 3.5 stars. Overall, this series is a fun time, but nothing mind-blowing, I would say. The series starts with these 2 girls, Agatha and Sophie. They live in this little town, and one night they are whisked away to the School for Good and Evil, and things kind of go from there. In the first book, there is some type of resolution, and we start this second book when that resolution is maybe not everything that Agatha and Sophie wished that it would be. So the fairy tale continues. I did get to use this for some good points because it's over 400 pages, which is nice, and also a physical owned book, which I think is worth some points taken away from the other team. All in all, not too shabby. And the second 3.5 star book that I finished yesterday was the one and only Bob, which is like this middle grade book about this dog named Bob. He's had kind of a rough life. Rough. Dog had a rough life. He becomes best friends with this gorilla named Ivan from the first book, The One and Only Ivan. This second book is following the events of the first book, but also just following Bob's life story and this weird like storm that comes busting through town. So it was pretty fun. It was an easy read, not worth many points. I think it was only worth 50 points for me, and I'm not sure that it was minus anything else, but I get to continue that series this week as well, and that's what I'm focusing on. Overall, a pretty fun time. I also have a 2.5 star review, and that's for Genius Camp, the second Smartest Kid in the Universe book. I read the first Smartest Kid in the Universe book during Wonderathon as like a quick middle grade read. It's about this boy. He kind of doesn't try too hard in life. He's not the best student, and then one day he accidentally eats some jelly beans that make him a genius, the smartest kid in the universe, as it were. And in this second one, he's given this opportunity to go to Genius Camp, and we kind of see what happens from there. There's like a big antagonist to the story. It's fine. It's not like my favorite thing, but it's okay, and I think kids would really enjoy this series. I think it's funny. I think it's like an interesting idea. I like the discussions of like neurochemistry that kind of put themselves in there, and the message in this one is also like, oh, I could have been smart this whole time if I had like tried and applied myself, which I like as a message because I firmly believe that. I mean, I know about neuroplasticity, but just overall it was kind of just a thing to get me some quick points. Not that many points, plus 50 I would say, and I don't think it lost many if any points, but it was more points, and that's what matters. I also started a bunch of books yesterday. I plan to start more today. I'm trying to finish some series because that's minus the most points. I'm also trying to focus on books over 400 pages. I started the third book for The School for Good and Evil because it's a chunker. It's like 700 pages, but it's a middle grade, so it shouldn't take too long. I mean, it's still gonna take a long time. It's over 700 pages, but this will be worth so many positive points. And then since I already read this book for this round of Squash That series, I'll be able to use this as like not only a physical owned book, but also like one that I read previously this round. I've also now owned the whole set of this series for over a year because I got it not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before. And Bailey said that if you owned all of the books for over a year, if you only read the first one recently, you could still count it as a series that has been on your TBR for over a year. So I'm going to be able to do that. I'm also starting, I think it's called This Wicked Fate. It's a sequel to This Poison Heart. It's the end of a duology, which will be good for points. Things are happening. Not quickly. I think my reading mojo has died a little bit this week, but it's happening regardless. So let's get to it. Hello, it is Monday afternoon, and I really need to catch up with you because a ton has happened since I talked to you last. I have 8 books to talk to you about, and then I'm gonna do this crazy thing and end my vlog before the event ends because I have just finished too many books in this vlog, and I know some people love long vlogs, and I am just generally not one of those people, and even when I like them, I don't like my vlogs to be very long because I'm the one who has to edit them. Can confirm. So I'm actually going to split this into 2. I'm gonna do half of the event in one vlog, half in another. This is partially my fault, but it is mainly the fault of the randomizer that is giving us the different games for Squash That series, because if it had been strategically good to finish books during the 24 and 48, then I would not be having this problem right now, but that simply wasn't the case. So I had all of qualifying and then the 6 days of 24 and 48 to just read through as much of as many books as I possibly could, and now that is coming to bear fruit, and I have finished too many books. So I have lots of books to talk to you about, so I'm going to try to make this clip as short and as interesting as I possibly can. We're gonna speed run it, you know? If you want to know more about one of these books, you can comment down below and I'll say more about it to you. But in general, I enjoyed these books, but nothing stood out as like, oh my gosh, I have to talk about it in either direction. Super good or super bad. They were like a lot of 3 and 4 stars, so like a good time overall. I'm glad I read them, but nothing to rave home about. You know what I mean? I'm also not going to tell you how many points I did or did not get with them. They kind of even out over time, I would say. Some of them I got more points than others, and that's that. Into the Wind-Racked Wilds by A. Deborah Baker, which is the 3rd book in the Up and Under series. I gave it 3.5 stars. I think this was one of my favorite Up and Under books so far, probably because it's, I think, the first one that I got to read with my eyeballs instead of listening to it. And since this series is so whimsical, my mind benefits from looking at the words. It's a very typical adventure story. It's a fun time. Then I finished Abaddon's Gate by James S.A. Corey, which is the 3rd book in the Expanse saga, I guess it is. Big sci-fi, big space books. And I like this one. I gave it 4 stars, which means I've rated it the same as the first 2 Expanse books, Leviathan Wakes and that other one. So overall, this was pretty on par with my thoughts about the first 2 of those books. I like the cast. I think the overarching plot is pretty interesting. We're following this group of space people as they go and do space things. That's all you need to know. It's kind of, like some people would call it a sci-fi thriller or a sci-fi horror or something like that because of the weird stuff that happens in it. I would say yes, probably, but to me it's sci-fi above everything else. Then I read The One and Only Ruby, which is the 3rd book in the One and Only Ivan series, and I reviewed The One and Only Bob, and I felt very similarly to this one, except I did like it a bit more. I gave it 4 stars, because this one's about the little baby elephant, and I think it's a really great educational resource to teach children about conservation, and especially how certain animals like elephants are being treated, especially by humans and hunters and poachers, but in like a safe, approachable way for kids. So I enjoyed that, and Ruby's just an adorable little elephant. I love her so much. Then I listened to the audiobook for You Love Me by Caroline Kepnes, which is the 3rd book in the You series. This one, unlike the 2nd one, which I reviewed in this same vlog, is told from 2nd person POV. And I said in my review of the last one, well, you know, you heard it, that I think I liked when they didn't do 2nd person POV, but I think it worked better in this one. In this one, Joe is like trying to start this relationship with this librarian, I guess, who has a daughter, and some of the twists were just crazy. It was like an interesting, messed up time, like these books always are, so I gave it 4 stars. Then I read a short story from the Finley Donovan series by El Casimino. I read Veronica Ruiz Breaks the Bank, which is the story of Finley Donovan's nanny and how she meets Finley Donovan, but more importantly, like kind of her life before she meets Finley Donovan. It was a good time, but nothing special. 3.5 stars. Little mystery thrown in there, just a short one. Then I finished a romance book, Friends Without Benefits, which is part of the Knitting in the City romance series, yes, by Penny Reed, and I gave this one 3 stars. It was like a pretty fun time. It's about this woman. She's in residency as a doctor, and she has this person who like meant a lot to her when she was growing up, but they had kind of a bad falling out when she ran away from him. He suddenly pops up in her life again now, and things go from there. It was a fun enough time, but nothing to write home about, I would say. Then I finished The Case of the Peculiar Pink Fan by Nancy Springer, which is the 4th Enola Holmes mystery book. In this series, Enola Holmes is the younger sister of Sherlock and Mycroft Holmes, and she kind of gets up to some stuff. There are codes and riddles and puzzles, and it's a really fun time. A good middle grade series, and I gave it 3 stars, like I already said. And then finally, I finished with Opportunity Knocks, which is the 2nd book in the Corridor Man series, which is this weird series about this guy. He did some messed up stuff, so he was disbarred because he was previously a lawyer. Now he ends up working for a law firm, not as an attorney because that would be illegal, but he also does plenty of illegal stuff too. He's truly a psychopath in every sense of the word, does not care about whether or not he hurts others, intentionally tries to hurt others all the time, and we're just kind of following his journey and seeing all the messed up stuff he does. And I think I liked this one better than the first, just because now I get what the vibe is supposed to be. So it was a 3 stars, like pretty fun, nothing special. The reason that I finished all these books since I last talked to you is because we had a points update a couple nights ago, I guess. And in the points update, Bailey and I were losing by like 1,000 points. And so we were like, great, we have some books to finish, we have some short things to get through, let's get through it right now. Our goal was to catch up. We kept track of what we read compared to that 1,000-point gap, got that gap down to 0, and now we're back on our regular strategy of getting to the ends of books and not finishing them until after our last points update, which is going to be in the next vlog. Kayla's team, I think, thinks they're sitting pretty at 1,000-point gap. I don't think they realized how quickly we came back from that. In fact, it was less than 24 hours from the points update that we were back to neutral, depending on what they read in that time. Although I don't think they read too much, didn't really hear that from them. And I think that's like a really good place to end this vlog. Is now it's Monday. I'll talk about my Monday reading in a future video. Make sure you stay tuned. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below. Have you read any of these books? And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!